It was a dark and stormy night when Sarah decided to take the shortcut through the woods. She had heard the stories about the forest, the whispers of people disappearing without a trace, the eerie sounds that came alive after sunset, and the warnings from the old townsfolk to never venture in alone. But Sarah was late, and the rain was relentless, soaking her to the bone. With a deep breath, she tightened her jacket around her and stepped onto the narrow path, the shadows of the towering trees swallowing her whole. The woods were unnervingly quiet at first, except for the occasional rustle of leaves. Sarah's footsteps echoed softly on the damp earth as she tried to convince herself there was nothing to fear. But with every step, the atmosphere grew heavier, as though the forest itself was watching her, waiting. She glanced at her phone. There was no signal. The realization made her heart sink. As she walked further, she noticed something odd. The trees seemed to twist and turn unnaturally, their branches resembling outstretched hands, clawing at the sky. The path beneath her feet began to fade, replaced by a blanket of moss that muffled her steps. Then came the whispers, soft, indistinct murmurs. She stopped and turned, her eyes scanning the dark, but there was nothing, just trees and shadows. "Hello," she called out, her voice trembling. The whisper stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, from deep within the forest, came the sound of a child's laughter, light and innocent, yet chilling. Sarah's skin crawled. Why would a child be out here, in the middle of nowhere? She quickened her pace, her breaths coming in short bursts. The laughter grew louder, seeming to follow her, circling her, until it was right behind her. She spun around, but once again, there was nothing. Her eyes darted from shadow to shadow, her mind racing. She had to get out of here. Suddenly, she stumbled upon a clearing. In the center stood an old, decrepit cabin, its wooden planks warped with age and covered in moss. The windows were shattered, and the door hung loosely on its hinges. Despite every instinct screaming at her to turn back, Sarah felt an inexplicable pull toward the cabin. Perhaps it was the hope of finding shelter from the storm, or perhaps something more sinister was drawing her in. She hesitated at the threshold, peering into the darkness within. "Is anyone here?" Her voice echoed eerily, as though the cabin was far larger on the inside than it appeared. Gathering her courage, she stepped inside. The air was stale, carrying the faint scent of decay. The wooden floor creaked under her weight, and cobwebs clung to every corner. As she ventured deeper, she noticed strange symbols. A large mirror stood at the end of the hallway, its surface covered in a thick layer of dust. But as Sarah approached, she realized something horrifying. The reflection didn't match her movements. While she stood still, the figure in the mirror tilted its head, staring back at her with hollow, black eyes. Paralyzed with fear, Sarah watched as the reflection slowly raised a hand and pointed toward a door behind her. She whipped around, but there was no one there. The door creaked open on its own, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Against her better judgment, she found herself drawn to it. Her feet moved as though under someone else's control. The steps groaned with each step she took, the darkness growing thicker around her. At the bottom, she found a small, dimly lit room filled with old photographs hanging on the walls. Each photo depicted people with terrified expressions, their eyes wide with horror. In the center of the room stood a table, and on it lay a single, dusty journal. Sarah picked it up and flipped through the pages, her hands trembling. The entries detailed the experiences of others who had entered the woods. Each one spoke of the same whispers, the same laughter, the same cabin. And all of them ended abruptly, the final words scrawled in desperation. "Don't trust the mirror." Before she could process what she had read, the laughter returned, echoing through the room. It was no longer a child's laughter, but a deep, guttural sound that sent shivers down her spine. She looked up to see the photographs on the walls changing, the faces in them now screaming silently, their eyes pleading with her. The mirror from upstairs appeared in the corner of the room, though she had no idea how it had gotten there. The reflection within was no longer her own, but a shadowy figure. The figure had a wide, unnatural grin. It stepped out of the mirror, its movements jerky and unnatural, as though it were a puppet on invisible strings. Sarah backed away, her heart pounding in her chest. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure reached out toward her,